What if the most powerful spiritual practice Neville Goddard ever taught was something he did alone, in the dark, at 3 in the morning, and almost never talked about publicly? Because here's the thing. Most people quote Neville's books. Almost nobody actually does the practice he said worked best. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what it is, and why it works. Before we get into the actual practice, and I promise we'll get there, there's a specific sequence Neville described that most people completely skip. I want to give you a little context, because without it, the 3 a.m. thing is gonna sound absolutely insane. Neville Goddard was a Barbadian mystic who lectured in the United States from the 1930s all the way through 1972. He didn't sell supplements. He didn't have a podcast. He gave lectures in rented halls to whoever showed up. And yet, decades after his death, he is probably the most influential figure in the modern law of attraction world, cited by people like Bob Proctor, Wayne Dyer, and even attributed as an influence by some of the biggest names in self-help. Why? Because what he taught actually works. Or at least, a lot of people swear it does. And the science behind why it might work is genuinely fascinating. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. Stop. Let me ask you something weird. Have you ever been half asleep, that moment where you're not quite awake, not quite dreaming, and suddenly you felt like you were falling? And your whole body jerked? That moment has a name. It's called a hypnagogic jerk. And it happens right at the threshold of consciousness. That threshold. That's where Neville did everything. Neville called it the hypnagogic state. The word comes from the Greek, hypnos, meaning sleep, and agogos, meaning leading. It's the state that leads you into sleep. Scientists today confirm it's a real neurological phenomenon. Your brain is producing alpha and theta waves, your body is relaxed, your critical faculty, that inner voice that says, "This is ridiculous, you're not a millionaire," starts to go quiet. And Neville believed, and this is the core of his entire philosophy, that in this state, your subconscious mind is wide open. Suggestions go in without resistance. Images feel real. Emotions feel real. And if your subconscious mind accepts something as real, it has to become real. That's not a metaphor for him. He meant it literally, now. Why 3 a.m. specifically? Why not just do this before bed like a normal person? This is where it gets interesting. Neville taught that the best time to impress the subconscious mind is during what he called a natural waking in the night. Not an alarm. Not your dog barking. A natural stirring, the kind where you wake up at 2, 3, maybe 4 a.m., you're aware, but you're deeply relaxed. In his lecture, The Secret of Imagining, which you can actually still find transcribed online, he says, and I'm paraphrasing because the man could talk, that in this state your imagination is more powerful than at any other point in the 24-hour cycle. The reason he gave: your body has already cycled through the deep sleep stages. You're in a lighter phase. The critical mind is still offline. But you're conscious enough to direct your imagination with intention. Modern sleep science actually backs this up. REM cycles get longer as the night goes on. By 3 a.m., most people are in their third or fourth REM cycle, the stage associated with vivid imagery, emotional processing, and memory consolidation. In other words, exactly the state Neville was describing. But here's where people get this completely wrong. They think the technique is just, imagine good things at 3 a.m. and go back to sleep. That is not what Neville taught. The actual technique has a specific structure. And if you skip any part of it, Neville said, You're basically just daydreaming in the dark. Let me walk you through it exactly. Step 1. Physical stillness. Neville called this entering a sleepy, drowsy state. Not meditation, not breathwork, just be still, completely still. He said the body should feel heavy, almost paralyzed. The goal is to relax the body so thoroughly that your awareness begins to detach from physical sensation. Step 2. The scene, not the journey. This is the part most people miss. Neville was very specific. You do not visualize the process of getting what you want. You don't imagine working hard and getting promoted. You don't imagine going on dates until you find the right person. You imagine the scene after. The end result. Already done. The handshake after the deal closes. Hugging the person you love. Holding the keys. He called this the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Step 3. Sensory vividness. Not just visual. He specifically said to engage all the senses. What does it smell like? What sounds are around you? What does it feel like to touch? The more real it feels, the deeper it goes. Step 4, and this is the one nobody talks about, loop the scene. Don't play a long movie. Pick one short scene, maybe 10 to 30 seconds, and loop it like a GIF. Over and over. Until you feel it. Until it feels natural. Until, and this is his exact language, it feels as natural as a memory, and then you fall back asleep from within that state. Now you know the technique. But I want to tell you about something Neville described that happened to him personally, a specific story he shared in his lectures, that, honestly, when I first read it, made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And it has to do with the relationship between this practice and what he called the bridge of incidents. Stick with me. Quick pause, because I want to address the elephant in the room. Some of you are watching this thinking, okay, this is delusional. You can't just imagine things and make them real. And look, I hear you. I'm not here to sell you a belief system. I want to show you what he actually said, and what modern psychology says about why this might work, and then you can decide. Fair? Here's what's real: mental rehearsal works. This is documented. Studies on athletes, particularly a famous one involving basketball players and free throws, showed that players who only mentally rehearsed improved almost as much as players who physically practiced. The brain, in many ways, cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. The same neural pathways fire. There's also something called the Reticular Activating System, the RAS, a bundle of nerves in your brainstem that acts as a filter. It decides what your brain pays attention to and what it ignores. You know how you buy a blue car, and suddenly you see blue cars everywhere. That's your RAS. It's been updated. It's looking for what you've told it matters. Neville didn't use this language. He was talking in the 1950s, decades before neuroscience would catch up. But what he described: planting a vivid, emotionally charged image of a desired outcome into the subconscious during a highly suggestible state. That's essentially programming your RAS. You're not bending reality. You're bending your attention. And attention, it turns out, shapes a lot. Okay. The bridge of incidents. I promised you a story. Neville taught that when you successfully impress the subconscious during this state, you don't just think differently, the external world begins to arrange itself. He called this the bridge of incidents, a chain of events, often seemingly coincidental, that leads you toward the thing you imagined. He shared dozens of testimonials in his lectures. People who imagined specific job titles and got called out of nowhere. People who imagined reconciliations that happened. And he himself told the story of imagining being discharged from the army during World War II, mind you, when that was basically impossible, and within weeks, through a series of strange coincidences, it happened. Now, here are the 3 most common mistakes people make when trying this. Mistake 1. Trying too hard. Neville was very clear. This is not a willpower exercise. You're not forcing an image into your head. You're drifting into it. There's a passivity to it. He said it should feel like a gentle assumption, not a demand. Mistake 2. Visualizing the wrong thing. Remember, the end result. Not the how. Not the process. The done deal. If you keep imagining the journey, you're subconsciously confirming that you don't have it yet. Mistake 3. Quitting before the feeling hits. The feeling is the secret. That's actually the title of his most famous book, The Feeling is the Secret. The image is just the vehicle. What you're actually planting is the emotional state of someone who already has what they want. If you're imagining holding the keys to your new apartment but you still feel anxious and doubtful, nothing changes. The feeling has to be real. Even if just for a moment. And yes, I am aware that, feel rich before you're rich, sounds like the most annoying advice ever given. Bear with me. So why is this called the forbidden routine? Because Neville himself said most people won't do it. Not because it's hard, it's actually kind of delicious, honestly. You're lying in a warm bed, half asleep, imagining your best life. That's the practice. The reason people avoid it is psychological. To genuinely imagine something as already done, you have to, even temporarily, let go of the story that it's impossible. And that's uncomfortable. The ego fights that. The critic in your head shows up. But for those few seconds where you genuinely feel it, Neville said that's all it takes. Tonight, if you wake up at 3 a.m., don't reach for your phone. Don't stress about why you're awake. Just try it. One scene. One feeling. Loop it until it feels real. Then go back to sleep. And let me know in the comments, what would your scene be? If you want to go deeper on Neville, there's a lot more rabbit holes to fall down. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.